I'd like to make an introduction. I have a topic, and it's a bit strange. So I actually have this phone as a remote, but I'm going to keep it next to the laptop, which makes sense because I could have used the keyboard instead. Um, this is the topic: good UX design and how to take over the world. So the first thing you might be thinking is, who is this person who's qualified to talk about good UX design, right? I'm an engineer, like I couldn't possibly know anything about that. So, but this one is rather obvious, right? Everyone knows this. So what I'm gonna try to do is kind of from first principles, reason, put up a structure where we define what we think good UX design is, and then we move over to this topic at the end. And I'd like to start out with a bit of a fun story. So it's called How I Almost Became a Billionaire. And some of you have already heard this story, so I apologize for those of my colleagues. But when I was 18, me and my friend had an idea. We were going to be the next Facebook. And I think a lot of people probably had this dream, but we actually started executing. And at that time, we were a bit tired of the fact that, whenever you use Instagram, you put up the best parts of your life, right? Birthdays, wedding days, and so on, vacations, because apparently vacations are the best part of your life. But we were thinking, how about if the application tells you when you should take the picture instead? So we have this thing where we get something that resembles the reality of the people that are using the application. And we spent 3 years. At that time, I had no software engineering experience except Hello World in Java, which will get you surprisingly far, to be honest. But I had no engineering experience, and all we did was basically product design for 3 years. We were 3 people: me, my friend, and a guy from my mom's home country, Romania, who did the software engineering, and specifically for Android, because that's all we could afford to finance with CSN, right? So fast forward 3 years later, we put it out into the market, and after a couple of months, we have, I think, 400 users. So can I get some applause for that? Because that's at least some people, right? And at that time, I actually had moved in with my girlfriend, who's now my baby mama. We have no word for sambo in English, so I prefer to say baby mama instead because I have a daughter. And the thing is that I needed some way to make money, because otherwise I'd just sit there and be half useless, even though we have an application on Google Play, right? So we actually shelved that project. We put it on the shelf, and then it sort of, in Swedish we say rann ut I sanden. We just didn't do any more work on it. 2 years later, there's an application that comes out from France called Be Real, and it does the exact same thing that we did, except they're now worth $200 million. So close, but not all the way, right? And this is why I think I'm somewhat uniquely experienced to talk about UX design. By the way, don't ask me to do anything UI related, because that will look horrible. But I do know some things about UX design. And let's see, we're gonna move on to the next slide. Right, so we're going to define what good UX is. And this is a fancy diagram I put together yesterday using Excalidraw. Maybe some of you have used that tool. I think it's really nice for diagrams. And basically what it consists of is, let's say you have a website and a user goes to the website, they have an idea, they want to buy a pair of pants. So what they do is they filter for the categories on the website, which is a clothing website, for pants. And then they realize that they want yellow pants, because who doesn't, right? So the thought, yellow pants, filter, okay, now we only have yellow pants, and then you continue this loop, until you arrive at the destination where you sort of intended to from the beginning. And good UX design, in my opinion, by the way, so this is not theory or anything, I've just kind of thought about this. Good UX design is the sort of the process of making this thing as smooth as possible, right? As simple as possible. The person has an idea and they want to get to whatever destination that they want to, right? And you just want to make this as smooth as possible. So let's sort of scale or take away everything that is not necessary in order to understand the bigger issue, which is how would we define the best UX design, right? Not just a good one that solves this process smoothly, but the best one. And what we can do is sort of go into a little bit of a thought experiment. And we imagine that there's a website. And all it has is one button. It says, click me. And the thing about this website is, if you click the button, you get what you want. You don't have to enter bank details. You don't have to filter any categories. You just get what you want. It's that simple, right? Or is it really? Because I have named this scenario the impossibly best UX, right? It's completely impossible, at least today when we can't read minds, and I'll get to that. But the thing is that what we did was we eliminated the loop here. We just have one action and you arrive at the destination. So there's no loop. This is the best UX possible, in my opinion. And this is, of course, hypothetical. But the interesting part is, so in order for this weird website with one button to be able to figure out what it is that you want, it needs to be able to read your mind. And specifically, it needs to know the user as much as possible, perhaps even better than the user knows himself. And this is a bit of a strange thing, right? We have a lot of things in our projects where we work with analytics, right? We collect data and we try to find out things about people in order to basically sell our products more. That's the normal use case. But I would like to sort of stray away or segue into another field of topic or domain just for a little bit so that we can see, is there a tool that is the best in order to get to know the user? And probably a lot of people have seen this picture. And this one here is, I could not find who made this, but whoever did, well done. So I give credit to whoever made this, I just don't know who it is. And this thing is very interesting because it's basically like levels of abstraction. And psychology says that sociology is just applied psychology. The biologist says that psychology is applied biology. And then we go all the way over here. And the mathematician goes, hey, I didn't see you guys over there. Because mathematicians know everything, right? But the thing is, I would like to argue that if you really want to know what good UX design is, user experience, you need to get to know the user. And in order to do that, you need to sort of know about the things that are the best ideals in psychology that relates to human, because psychology is the study of human behavior. So in my opinion, there are about 4 topics, and I'm going to cover one of them today. So if we go to a couple of slides here. But before I tell you which this tool is, I would like to give you an idea of how this tool was made. So the starting idea, the first principle, is that words mean something and many words mean more. And so what some smart guy in the 20th century did, he collected a bunch of words from the dictionary that he thought related to personality. And you might be thinking that's not a lot of words. Actually, there's about thousands of them. You know, you could describe somebody as angry, talented, driven, yada yada. There's a bunch of words for it. And the idea is, if there are many words for something in between humans, then it's actually important for us in one way or another. So what you do, in essence, right, you have this large bag of words that describe personality. And then you do something called factor analysis. And please don't ask about the mathematics here, because I don't understand it. But I have like a high level view of some of this. And it is basically, you take these words, you hand them out to users, and you ask them to rate their relevance to each other, like how much they think they are similar. And what you find is something like this, where sadness is, of course, 100% correlated with itself. But the thing that apparently makes you the most sad is guilt, right? Not crying or failure. And same thing with crying. Apparently the thing that makes you cry the most is failure. So according to this large data set. And as we know, the more data you have from more people, the more accurate the data tends to be. So this is what you do with personality as well. And that's why we move on to this thing here, the 5-factor model. And so what they've done is, from this huge number of words, they have found 5 factors. Some of them you can read, and the other ones you're like, what is this? Conscientiousness? No? I'll get to it. But here are the words anyway. And as you could imagine, when you take these words, you group them together, at the end you'll have the people choose between 2 words, right? And see, okay, which one is the one that makes most sense. And so you have this kind of tree thing that goes up. And so all of these words have many words behind them. And the words that are sort of one step behind are actually helpful in explaining what these things mean. And we're going to go through them one by one. And I'm going to try to give you examples of what they are and why they're useful. So this one, it's worth mentioning. These are personality traits, right? So you have a new person in your team, maybe it's Max over here, and you try to categorize him, right? What kind of person is he? Normally you would just talk to him for a while, spend time with him, maybe collaborate, and after a while you get a sense of what kind of person he is. But there's actually like a theoretical model that you can apply in practice. And all of these traits are on a spectrum. So either you're entirely open, and I'm going to explain what that means, or you're entirely closed. And most of these, or actually all of them, are 50 on average, 50% inherited and 50% caused by environment. So openness is defined as openness to experience. How likely are you to try a new ICA supermarket than the one you usually go to? And openness to ideas. If somebody tells you about aliens, are you immediately going to be, nope, that's not real? Or are you going to say, maybe. I'm the type of person that loves to talk about aliens. So in case that's your topic, we can have some discussions later on. But so here's the thing, right? You can categorize somebody. And we all know this. Like, we have maybe a relative during a Christmas dinner, and they insist on something being one way. Usually they're of an older generation, so I'm sorry for everyone above some certain age. But even if you show them with Google, here's the fact, normally the fact, right? Unless somebody edited the Wikipedia page. But they won't accept it anyway, so they're extremely closed-minded, or open-minded. So that's one dimension, or one factor. And the next one is agreeableness. And this one is fun, because it's not to say that one of them is better than the other. That's not how it works. The personality traits have their use in different environments, which is why they appeared in the first place, right? This is kind of the main concept of evolution, survival of the fittest. People are a certain way because it was helpful for them at some point, or their ancestors. And agreeableness is how likely are you to say yes when you want to say no. And some people here are already getting the impression that I'm quoting a famous psychologist here. Maybe you guys know who it is. But he has this wonderful story. I think it's fun because I like to collect absurd stories. And that is, he had a patient, and his job was to go into companies, find the people that were inefficient, and fire them. And when the psychologist asked him, "Don't you find that to be difficult?" And he said, "No, that's actually my most favorite part of the job. Very unagreeable." And you know, these traits are useful. Like you probably don't want to be extremely agreeable if you're a CEO or a boss, because one of your employees will come in and say, "I want 20,000 as a raise," and you'll say yes, which you shouldn't. But it's also useful to be agreeable, right? If you have, for example, an infant that can take care of themselves, you really, really should take care of them. And that's why it's useful to be agreeable in that case, because otherwise you just go do something else. And let's move on to the next one. So this one is fun, right? Some people go, oh, in some cases I'm I'm extroverted, and in other cases I'm introverted. I don't know what I am. So the definition of extraversion, and you certainly can be different things at different times, but the definition is, if you're extroverted, you gain energy from communicating with other people, being social. And if you're introverted, you lose it. And I'm very introverted, so I'll go to sleep after this talk because it requires a lot of energy for me. And this is interesting because now we were supposed to categorize these talks into groups, and I put one of the categories to being interpersonal skills, right? Imagine if you're trying to find a partner. Imagine that you have one, for example, and that person really, really enjoys to go to the club or do some activities during the weekend that require social energy, and you're the exact opposite. Well, guess what? That's going to be a bit problematic in the long run. Now, I'm sure there are some statistics about if you take these 5 dimensions and you take 2 people, what is the likelihood that those people will stay together? And you can probably use this framework, like if you're a team manager, categorize people as best you can, and then see what type of dynamics arise from these different people being in the team. The next one, the weird word that's hard to pronounce, conscientiousness. And it's defined as 2 things: orderly or industrious. So orderly is the person that likes a clean home. And again, here you can see the parallels, right? You have a partner. You think that that piece of clothing should be on the couch, and the other person thinks, nope, that's not where it should be. And you have different personality traits. Industrious is kind of hardworking, right? How likely are you to sort of find value or create value, basically? Industrious, like industry. This one, by the way, is highly correlated with career success for obvious reasons. Next one. This one is mostly bad, to be honest, if you're neurotic, and then there's the opposite spectrum. But in simple terms, it's like, to which extent do you react to negative emotion? Some people, you throw them into war, they come out just fine. They've seen horrible things. Like, war is probably the most horrible thing that we have here on Earth. I'm not sure about aliens, what they do, but some people manage that fine. Other people, they stress about the fact that they haven't bought enough Christmas presents for Christmas for everybody, right? People are different in that sense. And this actually relates to health and stuff like that, as you could imagine. And correlation is not causation. So even though correlation might be high, you'll find exceptions. So these are not like black and white rules. It's a spectrum, you could say. And I would like to sort of cross over to this thing of, okay, now we've learned this tool, we know how it was created from the beginning, but is it useful? Like, is it actually useful? And so I'd like to define something being useful as it works more than it doesn't. And so if it works 51% of the time and it doesn't 49, it's still useful, because guess what? If you go to the casino with those odds, you're gonna be rich. So that's my definition of useful. And actually, it turns out that this is even more useful than we thought. So, which brings up the next topic, right? Cambridge Analytica. They call it the scandal. I actually think these people are clever, but unethical, perhaps you could argue, or immoral. So what they did, it's very interesting. 2 dudes, 1 test. So there was one guy on Facebook that created a personality test. So you can actually find out your 5-factor personality model. You answer questions because words have meaning. You try to be honest so that the results are true. And he administered this test on Facebook to 270,000 people. And then he collected data from 200 of each of these people's friends. So now he had 50 million data points, and 270,000 of them were related to this personality test. Here comes the other smart guy, and he was like, we don't have the personality test for everybody, but we can reverse engineer the personality of people based on their likes. And he found that by knowing only a set of 300 different likes for each person, you could know the personality of a person equally well as if you would be their spouse. So this is pretty powerful. And the thing is that this is probably used in selling products, right? Somewhere at some point. But that's not really unethical, we think, in a capitalistic society, right? But what if you would try to sway elections using this data? So here's the thing. In 2017, a certain very charming person called Donald Trump was elected to become the US president, and he hired Cambridge Analytica. And what they did was they took all the data points in the US and they found the personalities of these people. And surprise, surprise, if you're open, you tend to be more liberal. And if you're closed, you tend to be more conservative. That's kind of the meaning of these things. So you can determine somebody's political point of view quite accurately using this data. And what they did, which is why it was called a scandal, is they were really clever. They said, let's target everybody that is in the center of these political views, and let's start putting a bunch of ads to them so that we can sway them to the side that we want them to. And I'm in the center, like I could vote either way, so I would be a prime target for this. And this is what they did. And it's not just Donald Trump. It just so happens that there's quite a few presidents, prime ministers, and even so-called dictators that used Cambridge Analytica. And it's kind of the reason that they got into trouble as well, because it worked too well. Yeah, so I would like to end this talk and say thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so yes, there is time for questions because that was a lot faster than I thought. And so we have a question over there.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was really good and really interesting. You did it super well. A common misconception regarding introvert and extrovert, I find, is that people mix it up with having social skills and not having social skills. You have the same opinion, right?
Yes. And I would say, like, presenting in front of people, for some reason, I feel fine doing it. But talking to my mother-in-law is not that much fun.
But I have met introvert people who are very socially skilled. So you wouldn't think they're introvert because they have learned and they are very good at interacting with others, but they get tired.
Yes, exactly. That's the thing.
Yeah.
They lose energy when
Yeah.
they do it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think sometimes we stigmatize people. If you say I'm introvert, it's like, oh, you don't have social skills, but that's not the same. That's the only point I wanted to make.
True, and that's a very good observation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have more questions, perhaps? So can we? Yeah. Thank you, Sarah.
In regards to the words and the power that the words give in this presentation, how would you think it can correlate with culture? Because culture is quite powerful also, and words can mean different things in different contexts and different cultures.
Yes, that's a very good point. I have a vague memory about reading this on Wikipedia, which is where I got all my information, by the way. So I might have just lied to you. I don't know. But I think that they have mostly found similar results in other cultures, except that maybe their words, or probably their words, are called something else. But the basic idea of a personality model works even in another culture, but maybe the words are different.
No more questions for Daniel?
No more questions.
Then I would like to give Daniel a huge applause, no?
Thank you. Thank you.